Between 2013 and 2015, two projects, key projects, were launched in the UK. Project Siren and Project Universal Credit. Their costs were £15 million and £2.4 billion respectively. These projects were of utmost importance to UK, to the government of UK. To ensure it was prepped for success, the leadership decided that Agile would be the way. They would adopt an Agile approach. What happened next? Both these projects failed miserably. And when the National Audit Office in the UK did an investigation, they determined that Agile was one of the main reasons for its failure. But what they added further was, Agile failed because there was a failure of adoption of Agile at every level of management and execution. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Are you one of the many who's frustrated at the level of Agile adoption in your organization? Or are you one of the many frustrated at the level of Agile adoption in your own teams? Or up to now, have you been oblivious to the fact that Agile is not working in your organization? My objective today is to prevent you failing like Project Universal Credit and Project Siren. And the benefit of my presentation is you will understand the top 3 constraints that inhibits Agile progress, and thereby allowing you to set Agile free. On point number 1, I'm going to talk about the importance of the organizational setup and how it affects Agile. I'm going to be talking about the importance of support and how it impacts Agile. And in my third and last point, we're going to talk about the importance of skill set to make Agile a success. I'm sure many of you here, or at least all of you, is familiar with Douglas McGregor's XY theory in management. Basically, theory X says the management style is such that the environment is more of a top-down communication. The staff, that is people like you and I, are more order takers. There's very little room for innovation, creativity. There's very little room for failure. Whereas theory Y says the management plays more of a facilitating role, more of a support role. They make sure that the environment created is more open, you're able to fail fast, you're empowered, the teams are empowered, and you're able to do your own planning and self-organized. So raise your hands if you think what suits Agile is theory X. Or how many things that is theory Y that supports Agile? Exactly. But the issue that we have today in most of the companies in Sri Lanka is from 2008 onwards, when most of the companies started to board the Agile wagon. They had the X-style management and wanted their teams to perform Agile. The question is, how on earth is that going to work? We rave about companies like Google, Facebook, and so forth. How is it that they are so successful? It's because they have a theory Y or a management style Y execution. And you can't really blame our companies. The reason for that is, before Agile came into the picture, companies were set up in their bureaucratic fashion. They had processes in place for very valid reasons. There are structures in place. There are levels of hierarchy. But with that change, when Agile came into the picture, companies, organizations which we work in, they struggle to adapt. And that, as a result, makes us to be more of agile just executors, just following the rituals, but not having the agile values or the mindset. And that, my friends, is the fundamental problem as why agile fails in our respective organizations. It's not the process as such, but it's about the respect, the values, and the agility mindset. The next problem that we organizations have is that it's more focused on dollars, saving, rather than customer value. Just think about it. If we were to revert our goals to be more customer value centric, indirectly we will be earning the dollars. But if we are more focused on dollar cost first, naturally, we are going to be cutting down on what's worthwhile for the customer. And this kills the agile behavior required in our teams. In big organizations especially, there are conflicts between departments. We had the roles of dev, we had the roles of QE, architecture. But in big organizations, there are conflicting goals. So how do we expect teams to perform in an agile fashion when their very leaders have conflicting goals? There's a problem in then agile execution then and there. So, what can you do? So, interesting fact, this quote, rumor has it, that is a quote from a bus conductor on the 154 bus route. If you look at it from his perspective, well, yeah. But let's look at the philosophical view of it. No matter what the organizational culture is, I know it can be frustrating. I know it makes you think to give up everything. Because what can I do when the management above or so is not agile-centric? But the thing is, you are the one who can bring in the change. And let me give you an example of how that works. Many years ago, I was working in this organization. I won't mention names. And we had a similar problem. The company grew, and agile adoption became poorer. And this caused frustration to the teams, because they too were having conflicting goals coming from their superiors. So what did we do? Fortunately, I had peers who were also had that agility mindset. We as seniors agreed that this was how we would want our teams to execute. We guaranteed them, we empowered them, we guaranteed them safety, and not to be afraid to fail. By creating that positive environment, the teams gradually started to think more agile. They themselves came up with solutions. They were more self-organizing. They themselves came up with resolutions to key problems. And therefore, we were able to facilitate their growth and their agile growth. So it's not impossible, but you just got to take the first step in bringing the change. If you bring out the change in yourself, you will be amazed at the positive influence you would have on the rest of your team. And when your team develops, you'll be amazed at how the rest of the teams will follow. By that, the management above will have to take notice of the benefits of true agile adoption. So we spoke about organizational culture, the importance of it. So moving on to the second point, let's talk about support. Just answer yourself these questions which I'm going to pose. When a new team member enters a Scrum team, there's no doubt there's onboarding training programs. There's ramp up on the product, on the processes and tools. But how much of time is invested in ensuring that individual is familiar with the process, agile process you're following? Just answer that yourself. How often do companies send only managers and very little of the software engineers and so forth to agile trainings? How often are agile trainings given only to the project managers? I'm sure the answer is, in most of the cases, it is the case. It's very restricted. The reason for that is because the organization has a mindset that agile is something very straightforward. Anyone can adapt. After all, it's based on a bunch of values and principles which anyone can follow. But the reality is, for this process to be successful, you need to be nurtured. You need to be trained. And I would like to take an example of how this worked well in my last company, which is Pearson. There are Pearson folks here. The company grew from 100 odd members to about 850. Agile was his mode of execution. So just think about it. So many new engineers coming in. And how are you going to sustain the agile process? What Pearson did was, they introduced a special group called the Agility Group. They were a bunch of agile coaches who were well versed in various flavors of agile. And as a result, they were able to guide, irrespective whether it was architects, engineering, project managers, they were able to guide them and make it a central place where we could reach out to them on how to execute things in an agile manner. The thing is, we need help, and it's taken for granted. And if you don't have that guidance, you are bound to fail. There will be inconsistencies on how you adopt agile. There will be rumors about certain agile concepts. So hence it's so important that there is a support built when you're executing in an agile manner. Because you should not forget that everything is going to be based on agile principles and values. Is there anyone here brave enough to tell me what the fifth agile principle is? The fifth agile principle. Anyone? The fifth agile principle simply states, you got to build your teams around motivated individuals. And by doing so, you need to provide an environment to support them and that you trust them. So we spoke about the importance of organizational culture. We spoke about the importance of support. And now coming to the last point, the skill set. I'm focused more on three important roles since they are most common. No disrespect to the other roles that we have. But these three roles play a key role in successful agile execution. In almost every organization, we have managers. I call them managers plus plus because it's not just the project managers. We have engineering managers. We have other functional department managers. We have operation managers. The managers have a key role in playing here. The reason why I say that is, it is you guys, those who are managers here, is you all are the ones who create that culture and environment for teams to perform. If you lack the knowledge in different agile processes, you should not be specific on a particular framework. What happens right now is most companies start off with just Scrum only. But there are other flavors, Scrum, Kanban, Crystal methodologies, XP. But if you're fixated only on one Scrum, and if your team runs into problems where Scrum doesn't work, how are you going to provide a solution for them to come out? Because remember, Agile is not just Scrum. There are other frameworks that are suitable for different needs. So managers, you all got to be coaches. You all have the technical know-how, but you got to be a coach. Because as I mentioned before, you got to nurture and groom your teams. Software engineers and QE engineers. I'm going to consider you guys together here. You all have the technical skills. There's no doubt about it. That's why you all are working. But the struggle that all of you all face is, and this is what I've seen, is that it's amazing how teams, as an example, if you're executing in a Scrum manner, how you continue to fail your iteration commitments. Why? When you try to dig in deep, you find out the teams are doing their daily Scrums. You find out that teams are doing iteration plannings. They're doing everything, but they are just unable to meet their commitments. And as a result, they're slipping their targets. The reason is because even though you all possess the technical skill, you all do not know how to apply it in an agile fashion. Example, when you have a big story, it's so important that you're able to slice it. Slice it enough that you're able to dev, QB test it, you're able to performance test it, and get it done. And it's potentially shippable to production. It's amazing how that knowledge is not imparted to the teams, and teams therefore struggle and blame Agile, that Agile just doesn't work to get their projects done. QE is so important to start automating first. There are approaches called test-driven development. That's called behavioral test-driven development. It's all about testing first, writing your scripts early, automating first. But what we see is teams are continuing to execute in the waterfall fashion within the iteration itself. So the skill set that is required here is more the agility skill set. You all need to improve how to execute things in an agile fashion. So we spoke about the 3 problems: culture, support, and skill set. So Spotify, a digital music service, is competing with giants like Google, with Amazon, with Apple. How is it this company is able to compete with them and be ahead in the digital music market? The reason is they have implemented Agile in a very systematic manner. Their management, the problem of organizational culture, their management lives and breathes Agile. In fact, their Scrum Masters and managers are Agile coaches. Their teams are small, they are empowered, and the management is always there to remove their roadblocks. And they are very successful. So the question to you, are you guys ready to set Agile free in your organizations? I believe you can. Thank you very much.